Hi everyone and welcome. It's me, Joseph, the Lycanroc Ranger, and in today's video I'm going to be doing another part of my Team Wild Conservation Assessment, this time covering the Beedrill line. So without any further ado, let's roll the intro and let's get started. So one quick thing before we get started, that being that works and images used will be in the description of the video. So what exactly do I do in this series? Well, I'm going to review the encounter types and rates for the Pokemon in the given video. I won't be covering all the encounter types though, just the main one for a given area, and this is not going to be including Let's Go or side games. And then, based on factors such as the presumed diet of the Pokemon, Pokedex entries, and needed hoops to jump through, I will then assess them based on the IUCN Red List categories. So starting off in an area that is fitting for Pokemon that was originally introduced in the Kanto region, we're going to start off in Kanto. So in Kanto, Weedle can be found fairly often on Route 2 and in the Pattern Bush, and very commonly in Viridian Forest. So moving on to Kakuna, in Kanto Kakuna can be found fairly often on Route 2 and in the Pattern Bush, and commonly in Viridian Forest. Then to finish up this line in Kanto, we have Beedrill, which can be found fairly often on Route 2 and in Viridian Forest. So yeah, overall in Kanto, the Beedrill line is least concern. They're found not in many places, but where they are found, they're found very frequently, so yeah, overall least concern in Kanto. Moving on to the Johto region, in Johto, Weedle can be very commonly found on routes 30 and 31, as well as in Ilex Forest and the National Park. On to Kakuna, in Johto, Kakuna can be found fairly often on Route 30 and 31, very commonly in Ilex Forest and the National Park, and it can be very commonly headbutted out of trees on Route 47. Then with Beedrill, in Johto, Beedrill can be headbutted out of trees commonly on Route 47, often in Ilex Forest, and can be found rarely in the bug catching contest. So yeah, for the Johto region, the Beedrill line is again least concern. They're found in more places than they are in the Kanto region, and they're found very commonly in those places, so yeah, overall least concern. Moving on to the Hoenn region, it doesn't look as good. In Hoenn, Kakuna can only be found in the Safari Zone as a hidden Pokemon after the battle with the Legendary. So yeah, unfortunately in the Hoenn region, I assessed the Beedrill line as critically endangered. For one, only Kakuna can be found, no Weedle and no Beedrill. Secondly, it's very hard to find it as it's only not quite in the post game but essentially there, and it's rarer than it would be normally. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give it critically endangered in the Hoenn region just because of the hoops you have to jump through to even find one, and the limited numbers where it can be found due to only the middle stage being findable. Continuing the not looking good trend, the Sinnoh region, where in Sinnoh, Weedle can only be found in the Grand Underground after you have the National Pokedex. So yeah, like the Hoenn region before, the Beedrill line in Sinnoh is critically endangered. A more in-depth explanation for this can be found in a theory that will be linked in the description of the video, but long story short, due to the fact that it's only findable in the Underground after you have the National Pokedex, that means it's incredibly rare, so I'm going to end up giving it critically endangered because of that. Continuing this not looking very good trend, the Unova region. So in Unova, like Butterfree, there is evidence that the Beedrill population is going down. As their area is reduced from where they could be found, Kakuna can no longer be found at all in the region, and now they can only be found in a hidden grotto, which is a substantial reduction from what they previously were, just 2 years prior in the lore. So yeah, overall, like Butterfree in Unova, due to the notable population deduction that Beedrill seems to have had between the two Unova games, it is critically endangered in the Unova region and potentially could go extinct there soon. Moving on to the Kalos region, where the prospects seem to be a bit better for the Beedrill line. In Kalos, Weedle can be found fairly often on Route 2 and in Santaloon Forest. Moving on to Kakuna in the Kalos region, Kakuna can be found rarely in Santaloon Forest, and they can also be found in the Friend Safari, but due to the fact they were likely moved there in a non-natural way for entertainment purposes, it doesn't really add much to their conservation status, so I can't really count that. So yeah, overall in the Kalos region, the Beedrill line is least concern. While their numbers are lower than they are in other regions like Kanto or Johto, I don't think this is likely due to external factors. I think it's likely just due to competition or whatever. Probably with Vespiquen, though I don't really know for certain, as there isn't a one-to-one with like Butterfree and Vivillon. So there isn't a direct one-to-one, but I still think it's likely just due to competition rather than an external factor causing their numbers to go down. This one might be one to watch in a future potential sequel game to Kalos. Back to the Alola region, where it resumes not looking good. In Alola, Beedrill can only be found if an island scan is active on the right day and on the right island. this is a very massive hoop to jump through, so overall it doesn't look very good. So yeah, in the Alola region, the Beedrill line is again critically endangered, just due to the amount of hoops you have to jump through to even find one. They're not that common, and I don't think it's just due to competition that they're so low. So overall, they're probably critically endangered in Alola. Moving on to Galar, where the Beedrill line cannot be found, and there's no evidence they ever could be found, so I can't really give them a conservation status in Galar as they were never there, so I'm moving on. So moving on to the overall assessment for the Beedrill line, they're a lot less frequently showing up than the Butterfree line, which in some ways makes sense, as Butterfree has a more herbivorous diet, while Beedrill starts off with an herbivorous diet, but then moves on to a more carnivorous diet as it evolves. So it does make sense why their numbers are lower in some regions than Butterfree, so there is that. But they're still in a lot less regions and a lot less frequently than Butterfree is, to the point where they're critically endangered in multiple regions, more so than Butterfree is. But their assessment is interesting. My overall assessment, though, while there is notable differences between it and Butterfree, is the same as Butterfree for Beedrill, that being least concern. However, I will say they might be approaching vulnerable as they're less common in more regions, but again, that might just be due to the fact that they're more carnivorous as they evolve, so that might just be normal, but still, they're not as frequently showing up, which is a point of concern. But just because they have so many critically endangered, I'm not going to give them endangered or critically endangered or even vulnerable. For a similar reason as I brought up in the Butterfree video with the Grey Wolf, you can be doing really bad in a lot of places, but as long as you have a few places where you're doing fine, you're probably just going to be least concerned. And while they may not be doing as well in other regions, the Beedrill line still has Kanto and Johto where they're doing really well. So overall, they're still least concerned, but they might be approaching the vulnerable status. So this concludes my third Team Wild conservation assessment, this time for the Beedrill line. What'd you think of this video? Let me know in the comments down below. What'd you think of the status I gave to Beedrill, and would you change it? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!